So let's get going. So the first part is we have a ton of information, and even we are aware of how much stuff there is on our website. It is so big that even we can't find everything all the time. One of the secrets, the dirty secrets of AOPA is if you want to find something, just Google AOPA and whatever it is, because it's easier sometimes than trying to figure out where it is, because we have so much content that's in there. But specifically for flight schools and CFIs, I thought that these things would be useful to you. And again, the links are there, but those will be available in the slides that download, so it should make it easy. You can click on them and it should take you directly to the part that I'm talking about. We have 2 newsletters that are both bi-weekly. Actually, I should say that. The Flight School Business Newsletter is a bi-weekly newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed to that, that's a free one. A lot of the stuff is free. And so that's one that has articles specifically written for managing and owning a flight school. It has some CFI stuff in it, but mostly it's about that flight school business part of it. So that's a great one to check into and to see, you might find that useful. All the archives are available too if you go to that website and sign up. Then there's the CFI to CFI newsletter. Anybody get the CFI to CFI newsletter? It's quarterly from the Air Safety Institute. That's a really nice one too. It's actually pretty long, and it's got lots of articles specifically for CFIs, training tips, and things of that sort. So that's a great source as well for a newsletter. We have our AOPA publications. I know most of you probably know like Pilot Magazine, but specifically the one that I really like for flight training is Flight Training Magazine. It comes out, it's not quite monthly anymore. They've put it on a slightly reduced schedule, and part of it is now an E thing. So they've got some printed and some E, depends on the schedule. I don't know that off the top of my head, but that's a really good one. And your students, if it's something that you think would be helpful to them, it's free to them they can get it for at least 6 months for free. That's a great deal. The other part about that is there's a section in there for instructors. So it's got teaching tips for instructors or articles that are specific for that. So really great magazine if you haven't checked that out. And then the other part up here is that we have monthly webinars. We got 3 that I wanted to point out. We have more than that, but these are the 3 that I thought could be applicable to either you, your staff, or your students. One is Flight School Connector. This is akin to that flight school business thing I talked about. So it is, anybody join on Flight School Connector at all? Anybody done it? So few. So we're trying to grow that, so you'll see some emails coming out, so check it out. Or you can go to webinars.aopa.org. This is one that specifically every month we talk about running a flight school. And so, for example, just last week, we did one, I'm blanking on the topic, Pablo. It's like I literally wrote the thing and I'm blanking on it. Well, I know that next month we're doing one on flight simming. We've done stuff in the past about insurance topics. We had an attorney on, I think it was 2 months ago, talking about legal things that flight school owners should consider. So it's very, very specific. We've done things on customer service recovery and employment hiring. And it's funny, we make a joke, the more boring it is, the more people seem to like it. Because we get a small live audience, but we get hundreds and hundreds of views afterwards, up to about 500 on average of views afterwards. So you might find that useful for you in that really kind of get down in the weeds on the business stuff. So we try to be helpful with that. As Pablo likes to say, there's the much revered Don't Get Rusty webinar. This is a monthly one that we actually started during COVID, and the idea was, you probably heard of our Rusty Pilots program. This was one we thought, well, how about if we, during COVID, when people weren't flying, especially during lockdown, we came up with one, let's do a monthly thing. Actually, we did it weekly at first, which is insane. That was crazy. But it's just on topics to help people stay proficient. And so that's what it's really about. So that's monthly, and it's kind of fun, and it's actually done in a way that we keep it lighthearted. We try to keep it conversational. We try not to make it, we even say, like, if you want serious stuff, this is not the place to do it.
Yeah, we're not professionals.
No, we're not professionals at all. And then the Air Safety Institute also has a monthly safety webinar. So you can check all those out at that webinars.aopa.org. So those are good ones. You can either maybe check them out yourselves in some cases for that, or it could be for your students too, or your CFIs. Okay, part 2 of this is, how many of you guys are familiar with the AOPA, Air Safety Institute, like the videos and the courses? So that's usually the one that people know about. Great videos. It's got a long link too, that's why you'd never want to copy that one down. It'll have just a short, like a little vanity URL. But this one is one that I would highly recommend that either you go check out or point your students towards it, because this is all free, whether you're an AOPA member or not. The Air Safety Institute is a separate sort of, it's part of the AOPA Foundation, and they've got great training materials there. It's not meant to take over ground school, but it's got great supplemental stuff for that. So I'd highly recommend checking out their safety spotlights, or they've also got like a topic list. It's all focused in. So if you've got someone that's working on takeoffs and landings, there's a section on takeoffs and landings. There's one on airports, non-towered and towered airports. There's stuff on emergency procedures and aeronautical decision making. It's got great information, and they've got it all gathered together to make it really easy for you to say, I want you to go to that section and read this or watch this video or whatever it might be. So highly recommend going to the Air Safety Institute. You may have seen their videos like on YouTube. Really, really good videos. And then they've got studies, reports, online courses, like tons of stuff. Have any of you heard about the Air Safety Institute's Focused Flight Review? A few, so just a couple of people. So this is one, the idea being that, you know, like the typical flight review, I know that I had it happen when I was a new CFI, which was like somebody comes in for a flight review, so like, well, what do we do? Like, I guess we'll go out and we'll do some stalls and steep turns and basically do like a miniature check ride, right? And see how you do and practice some landings. The Focused Flight Review, which actually was really similar. I was looking at that Redbird Pro thing today. It is based on those things that are killing pilots. So whether it's loss of control or a VFR into IMC, they've got a program that's laid out for you to follow as a CFI. It's got it all laid out. These are the things that you should do to then complete a flight review, and it's above and beyond a normal flight review. And it's something you can do in multiple sessions or do it in one. It's up to you. But it's got even homework and prep for the person to do before they come. So if you're looking for some ideas for your CFIs, on how to do a flight review, maybe to make it more focused and effective, that's a good one to check out. They've got the personal minimums contract for ADM. If you haven't seen that, they've got one for both VFR and IFR. So that personal minimums contract is something where you sit down and you write down, I will not fly in more than a 10 knot crosswind, or I won't fly in this more than this or that ceiling. So that's really good stuff right there. And of course we have our EFARC, the online CFI refresher. So that's all Air Safety Institute stuff. Now I will say that the CFI refresher, you have to pay for that. That's the one thing, but that just goes back to help the AOPA Foundation. It goes back to them. And then finally, a good place to send your students to is AOPA's Learn to Fly page. So if you've got someone that comes in, they're kind of like, well, I'm not really sure, I'm thinking about flying. It breaks it down into tracks. Do you want to fly for fun? Do you want to do it as a job? You're not really sure, whatever it be. It gives you a nice path. It gives you a really nice introduction into the process of learning to fly. So that's that link right there. So lots of information, and this is just like scratching the surface. These are just the things that I commonly pick out and say, do you have any information for students or CFIs? Yes, we do. We've got tons of stuff. Go check these out. Now, services that we provide. How many of you, I have any flight school owners out there? Okay, so I got a few. You guys all listed in the airport directory? Yep. So have you found any use in that? Do people find you that way ever, or FBOs maybe? So it's a free listing. You can get yourself listed, so if someone goes to an airport or they search for an airport, if you get yourself listed in the airport directory, they can see all the FBOs on field, whether it's schools, flying clubs, I don't know if the restaurants, I think all the businesses are, so the restaurants maybe. But it's all there that you can do for free. And if you get listed there, it automatically puts you into the database for our flight school finder. So when someone goes to look for a flight school, it'll pop up there as well. So we've got two separate search engines where they could find you by airport or find you by state or name of your school. So great places, and that's all free to you. So just all you have to do is just send it there. Go to those, and there'll be a place to add it on. If you go there, it says like add here, or just email us and we'll get you in. For your people like CFIs that are getting ready to move on or helping them out, we have an aviation job board. So if they're looking for, if somebody's looking to say, okay, I've done my flight instruction for a while and I want to move on, there is that. You can list jobs there, but you can even post jobs there that you have looking for CFIs or other staff. And then you might find it useful, but if you're an AOPA member, you can use our VREF valuation. So that's free for members. They can go on there, and so if you're looking to check out an airplane or buy one, that's a nice service as well. So some basic stuff that's there just to go on and log in and do. Now, what about help when you need it? This is one of the ones that really recently that I have found that I thought was interesting. I've had school people come up to me, in fact, just twice today, talking to folks that I've helped out with that. We have, and in fact, I'll jump down to that when I get to that government advocacy part, I'll talk about that. We've got our Pilot Information Center. Has anyone called that? 1-800-USA-AOPA, so a few, right? We've got an entire team of CFIs and medical specialists that you can call and ask anything. I used to actually work there when I first started at AOPA. And I remember getting phone calls from student pilots. I remember getting them from flight instructors. You get them from the people that are in the hangar arguing about some like really obscure point and they want to know what the answer might be. So the Pilot Information Center is a great resource. There's also an online forum that goes with it. So if you've got questions about some thing and you're looking for help, whatever it might be, aviation related or flying to the Bahamas or whatever, that's a great resource as well. And You're supposed to be a member to call it, although typically even if you're not a member, they will likely talk to you anyway, at least for a little bit, and encourage you to become a member. Pilot Protection Services, we've got both a medical and a legal plan. So if you've got someone that comes and they've got questions about being, like getting a medical certificate, or I've got this medical situation, can I fly? We have an entire website with all the information on it. We've got all the FAA approved medications listed there, so if they're on a med, you can say, can you fly with that? And if they're having to go through like a special issuance process, or they have any questions about any of that, they are specialists that help you out. These are folks that have worked in doctor's offices. They know the medical stuff really well. They build relationships with Oklahoma City and the medical specialists there, so they know what the FAA process is, so they can really help. And the big thing that I'll tell you about that is that if you've got someone, you or someone else, going to go get a medical, and they're a little unsure, like, am I gonna pass it or not? Do not go to the AME and do a medical exam right away. I can give you two recommendations. One, you can just call the AME and say, hey, I want to do a practice exam. I don't want to do a real one, I just want to run through everything and see if I'm okay. Or you can also call AOPA, and they will actually take all your medical records, you send them to them, they will look it all over for you and say, yep, you're good to go, or no, or not. They'll answer those questions. So that way, when you go to the AME, you will walk in with exactly what you need. And instead of having the stuff sent off to Oak City, which is what will happen if you go in unprepared, because they have 10 days that they got to send it into Oak City, now you can get it, oftentimes, a medical certificate issued right in the office, and then they send the paperwork off. So really good deal with that. And so there is a part of that is getting some of those medical services. There's a membership fee on top of that, but I pay for it and it's worth it. And not to mention our legal part, you can have access to an attorney in case something were to happen. So that's a really good deal. This government advocacy one, this is the one that I think people don't really seem to know a lot about, because it's like, they're even in an office down in DC, like we're up in Frederick, Maryland, and they're in DC. But we have a staff of regional managers, so every one of your states is part of those regions, and there's a manager there that will help you with any kind of government affairs. And there's also our headquarters staff in DC. I had, you guys know Bob Hepp? Anybody from Aviation Adventures up near DC? He's wearing the red shirt. In fact, I had not a Redbird shirt, but a different one. It says Aviation Adventures. He was having trouble with a POI that was with their 141 thing, and was denying all kinds of stuff and giving them all this hard time. And he had email trains full of stuff about all the problems that he was having, and just could not get through and make it work. And he contacted me and said, Chris, is there anything that AOPA can do? And I put him in contact with our government affairs. I said, I got Murray. I think he probably is the right person to talk to. I just reached out to them and said, who kind of deals with this? Murray had come to us from the FAA. Went down and spoke with Bob, kind of like skeptical at first, you're just complaining because like you're not getting what you want. And it turned out that he was like, Bob, you are completely right, this is ridiculous. He went with him to the FSDO, talked to what was going on there, got him a new POI, and got everything sorted out and done. So we've got folks that know this stuff, that have relationships with the FAA or used to be with the FAA, and they will help you out. So whether it's dealing with the FSDO, your 141, maybe DPEs, they are working on DPE issues. We are working on stuff with fuel. We know the 100 low lead is a big problem right now, like out in California, and it going away. 141, like I mentioned, fuel, airport issues. You've got problems at the airport. These are the folks to call. They will try to help you out. So just know that we're there for you, and you can just contact us. If you need to, contact me, and I will route you to the right person. It's like you can come to me, and I'll say, you know what, that sounds like a government affairs thing. Let's see if we can get you in touch with Chris Cooper or whoever it might be. Okay. So lots of stuff already. Like, we want to be there for you. Has anybody seen anything so far that you're like, I didn't know that AOPA did that? Or did you already all know all this? Everybody, wow, this is amazing. Pablo, you didn't know some of this? That's pretty good. All right. So one of the products that I did want to share with you guys, this is specific. This is what Pablo, and one of the things that Pablo and I work on. This is what Pablo works on, and that I help with. But we created an app that's actually came out last year, so it's been out about a year now, and we're making a push to try to get it out to flight schools. A lot of independent flight instructors have signed up for this, but it's AOPA Flight Training Advantage, and basically it is an adaptive flight training program. So this concept came about, I was actually getting frustrated with, I was using a paper syllabus, and by the way, my background is I was a school teacher for a very long time, like 17 years I taught, and then I was a flight instructor and all this other stuff. And I was using the paper syllabus, and I kept thinking, like, I know that what you need is you need some more practice on landings, but it's like I don't want to keep just hashing the same stuff over again. I really just want to go, let's go out and get your night stuff done. We can combine some to keep you moving, and I know that the landings will get better. but I was trying to also be good about follow the paper syllabus. What this thing does, this app, is it will take in the student's progress, and based on their performance will adapt the next lesson to what it is that they need. So for example, let's say someone is doing really well with steep turns in aircraft control, but they're just having a hard time with landings, which we know is a common thing. It will let them progress on. So if they've knocked out steep turns, they do it a couple times, they move on to something else. Steep turns are not going to keep coming back up. Let them progress into the areas that they still need to learn, and let them practice the things that they still need to work on. Yes?
Is this something that can be adapted to a 141 program?
Not yet. We need to get 141 approval for it. So what we want to do right now is we're just trying to get it out, get people using it. Once we can show that, yes, this is good to go, and we can show that to the FAA, we are going to seek 141 approval for it. So
that's pretty cool if you can get 141.
Yeah, that's what we're working towards. So right now it's Part 61, private pilot only, and it's airplane single engine land. Although we have had some glider schools and other things, they sign up for it and they sort of, and adapt it to their use. So it's got in there, it's got things like, well, in fact, let me just show you the video. And by the way, it is free for CFIs and schools. There's no charge to CFIs or schools to use it. We do charge the end user, the student, for using it. Currently it's a $19.99 per month, plus you have to have AOPA membership. There is a 3-month free trial to start, so they can start out using it, no pay at first, and then if they use it past this 3 months, then they'll start paying. So let me just show you the video. I think this is pretty cool.
As pilots, we know that flying is among life's great experiences. Learning to fly can be a challenge, but now there's an innovation in pilot training that increases efficiency, streamlines the training process, and improves student retention. The AOPA Flight Training Advantage uses an iPad app at headquarters to create an adaptive, dynamic training experience that's unique to each student. Designed to address the most common reasons students drop out of flight training, the AOPA Flight Training Advantage system is used by flight schools, CFIs, and students to make training more effective, efficient, and fun. Flight school owners can see key business metrics at a glance, create notifications for their school, or add their own training resources to the system. They can even create their own reports to highlight just the information they need. With instant access to student records, school owners can quickly see how each student is progressing. CFIs can easily see what's ahead and be prepared for every student. Each lesson is dynamically created for your student based on their past performance. The system also assigns preparation materials and shows when the student has viewed them, so the student can come to every lesson armed with essential information about the concepts and maneuvers they will learn. If a student misses a portion of the assigned prep work, it's clearly marked for the CFI to review before flying. And if an instructor can't make it to the lesson, it's simple for another CFI to quickly step in temporarily with all of the necessary lesson information without missing a beat. With instant access to the student's entire training history and the system-generated lesson ready to go, there's no need to waste time trying to figure out what the student has learned and what they should do next. When it's time to fly, all the activities for the lesson are set out in the app. It's easy to measure and record student performance against FAA standards. On the ground or in the air, instructors have access to detailed information about every maneuver, along with teaching tips from experienced pros. And when conditions change, it's easy to add or skip activities to create an ideal lesson for the real world. Student scores and CFI notes make it easy to debrief at the end of the lesson. And the app automatically creates the next lesson and assigns the next lesson prep work based on the student's past performance, adult learning principles, and FAA requirements to help make training efficient and effective. You can also easily schedule the next lesson. Students can check their progress, access their training records, and prepare for their next lesson from any device, making it easy to keep moving toward their goals and share the fun and adventure of learning to fly. Learn how you can get the AOPA Flight Training Advantage at aopa.org/AFTA.
Do you have that all the way to CFI or?
No, right now we've just got private pilot, and so it's like we got to make sure that we get that going, and then there is a commitment. If we can make that work, then we can do the other ones. We already started planning out the basics of the instrument. Because obviously it takes a lot of time. One of the things, if I go back one here, that's in there, and the reason it was very intensive. One thing was Pablo was the one that did all the sort of the logic behind everything, and then we worked with a vendor, but he's got the tech background. But in there, we have not only all those functions that it does, and Pablo will be doing a presentation tomorrow at 11:20. 11:20. Which room? You know? Room 2. Room 4. It's on your stack. Anyway, he'll be actually doing more of a demo and talking more about it, but it's got 3 different portals. There's an iPad app that's used in the airplane by the CFI. And so in there, that's where you have the maneuvers that will come up, the things you want to do, that you're going to be doing during a lesson. You can grade them, you can add things on the fly. So for example, you're out doing things and there's a DC crosswind, you say, you know what, I'm going to teach you crosswind landings or something like that. So you could do that, you can add that in. And then there's a student portal that they access to see their progress. And that's the big thing. How many times have you heard, what more do I have to do, or where am I in my training, or students complain about that? They can see in this, in the portal, so it's through a browser, they can see exactly where they are, and this is what's left to do. They can see all the feedback, they can see all the history of their lessons. For the owner, the school owner, they can see what all the CFIs are doing, see all the student progress, they can see all this stuff as well, and even control some of it by adding in resources, and various, just very, like I said, resources that just monitor what's happening with the CFIs and just track everything. So we think it's a great program, and Pablo and I believe in it really wholly, and we worked super hard on it. And the other thing that I spent a lot of time, which is why it's so intensive, is that for every task in there, for every activity we call it, because tasks sound like work, for every activity you're going to do, like steep turns, we have teaching tips from experienced CFIs. In fact, is Ron in here? Didn't you help me write some of those? You may have, I don't remember. We had some of those. Yeah, we did some of those. But anyway, we've had I hired a bunch of different CFIs. I wrote a lot of the stuff. So it's got teaching tips, and it's meant to be a growing database. So it's really a cool program. So if you're interested, go check it out. You can see demos, or like a walkthrough on AOPA.org/ we call it AFTA is our nickname for it. And Pablo said I'll go into a deeper dive tomorrow for that. So check it out. All right, let me skip past that. Money for flying. All right, so the big thing that I want to just point out to you here, and you may or may not be aware, but we have AOPA flight training scholarships every year. And so they are going to start back up again this September. They'll open up. They're closing on the 11th of February, so it's probably a little late to get folks signed up for it now, unless they're really, really right there. But we've got various categories too. It's not just for primary. We have ones for high school students. If they have their written test done, that's part of the key. So if you know any high school students that are really motivated, have them do the written test. It makes them very competitive for this. It makes them eligible. But we had 80 $10,000 scholarships just for high school students. We have money set aside for high school teachers. There's also ones for advanced ratings, so someone going for their commercial or CFI, you can apply for those as well. So this is a really good deal, and take advantage of it. A lot of times people don't always apply. We do get a bunch for the advanced, but for the student ones, we don't get as many as you would think. So encourage people that you know that might want to do it in the flight training to do this, because somebody's getting the money, right? So you got to play to win though. And a lot of people just tell us, well, it seems like a lot to do, or I won't get it. Well, you'll never get it if you don't apply for it. So give that a shot. So check that, encourage your students to do that. We do have flight training loans. These are credit dependent, so that's something I know it's difficult, and that's one of the things I was just speaking to someone earlier that we'll try to dig into and try to find out all the flight training loans that may be out there to see if we can gather those maybe for a future episode of Flight School Connector. But we have them, they are credit dependent, so it's a personal loan, and they range anywhere from, depending on your credit rating, from $2,500 up to $30,000, so that's some place you can check out and see. I know that it's difficult because a lot of times banks don't want to always like give out personal loans for huge amounts, but something to consider. And then we have aircraft finance loans too. One thing to be aware of, and it's kind of weird, but for flight schools, if you're established, you're profitable, and you show some equity, you can get money to help buy new aircraft. If you're brand new, unfortunately, I guess the banks don't like to give out to unproven entities, so it's probably better to get someone to lease an aircraft or to buy an aircraft and lease it to you. But there is an option there for aircraft finance loans. So just know that we've got those things if that's something you might need. And then one thing that I want to talk about, this is something that I spend a good chunk of my time as well, or a good part of the year working on, is our Flight Training Experience Awards. Is anybody in here, any of my award winners out there right now? Yep, back there, great. So the Flight Training Experience, we do a survey, and we typically have done it during the summer with the award ceremony at Redbird Migration, but of course Migration has now moved from the fall to the early spring, late winter. So we're going to shift it next year to go into the fall. But what it is is we run the survey usually for about 2 months, so about 60 days or so, and your customers fill it out for you on your behalf, whether it's for you as an instructor or for your school. Then what happens is we collect all that data, and as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, which is for a CFI, you've got to get at least 5 people filling out a full thing for you, or if you're a school, you have to get at least 10, you can be eligible for an award. Regardless of that, you will get a report card. If you get at least 5 respondents, whether a school or a CFI, we will send you a report card. I'm going to show you a thing on the next slide that shows that report card part and talk a little bit about that. The other thing is though, if you meet the criteria, then you now become eligible to win an award. And that's what we're doing actually tomorrow at the end of migration. We're going to do the award ceremony. Some of you may be familiar with that or have heard of it. And this means, not to mention recognition for you, it's national exposure. You will be out, you'll get highlighted in AOPA media channels. There's a special issue of Flight Training magazine that we put out. But the big thing that I think is probably one of the big value adds here is that the schools that win these awards, sometimes, maybe to their detriment in a sense, they get, especially the top ones, get inundated with business. Lots of people want to come and fly with you because you've been recognized as one of the best. So it's a great way to get recognized and kind of show as a marketing tool to get people to come to you. So you do get national exposure and you'll get increased customer volume. So it's a good program. The other part of that though that I think is really valuable, I know that schools really and CFIs care about it because of business, but the other part that I really think is important is you get feedback right from your customers. You can find out, what am I doing well, what do I need to work on? And I've had schools, and in fact on the next one here, I've had schools use it for strategic planning. They get the report card from us and they use it for their next year's strategic planning and say, what do we need to work on? We found out some comments about our staff. I've had ones with a front desk staff that was on their cell phone, and they find these things out because they don't necessarily see it. Of course, people are going to, oh, they put their cell phone away when the boss walks around, but they find out what happens when they're not around. So it's a great way for that, but also you can then double down on the things that you're doing really well. The report card looks like this. It's a short survey. It's usually about 10 to 12 questions. We cover, I'll talk more about this tomorrow night, but we cover some key areas: educational quality, customer service, community, and then I'm blanking on the other one, information sharing. And so you will see the question that was asked. You'll see how you did, what the average was from the customers that gave it to you. You'll also see how you compare against the national average. So it's kind of, maybe it's a little small up here. You can see this person's score on this question was 3.4. The national average was a 2.6, and in your region, it's broken down by region as well, was a 2.4, and you can see exactly the breakdown of how many people answered what for you on that question. So you can figure out, like, is there something? Plus you get, as long as they opt in, which most people do, you'll see their free responses. They'll just get to say, why or why not should this school win an award, or why or why not should the CFI get an award? And they just write all kinds of stuff. Usually it's very positive. Occasionally you see some negative things, like, this school, the engine fell out of the airplane. I don't really like it that much, or things like that. Most of the time it's very positive. Although I have to agree with Josh, people love their CFIs and they like their flight schools. I don't know why that is. I'm not sure what the deal is there, but it's that personal relationship that you build.
One helps you and one takes your money.
Exactly. It's probably what it is. I was even saying, I was teasing somebody like that's because they're like the man or whatever, right? So that part of it. So that's a great thing. We have a net promoter score that's part of it too. I think it's a great program. I highly encourage you to take part in it, and we will send you this information. So I spend, it's a ton of work, but I wouldn't do it if I didn't feel like it was worth it. And so hopefully it drives you to see what your customers think and also help you get into some best practices and things like that. So check it out. It's a great program. Membership options. So let's say you've got some folks that you've got new people coming on board and you think, this AOPA stuff sounds pretty good. We do have some membership options. If you've got someone coming in that wants to learn how to fly, there's a free 6-month student membership. Like straight off the bat, they get Flight Training magazine, they get access to all the stuff, like full access to everything that AOPA does. And so that's free 6-month student. If you know of some kids, maybe you're helping out high schools and things like that, there's a free for 13 to 18 year olds for the entire time they're 13 to 18. Any within there's an aviator membership, so that's just free and they get to keep it until they turn 18. And then if you have any military folks, they can get a free 1-year membership as well. Of course, regular membership is $79 a year, and there's the link there that you can get from the slide deck later. So, just some basics. Okay, lastly, I wanted just to introduce kind of our flight training team. So it's me, So I'm like I said, I focus on the education part. I do all that sort of stuff focused on educational learning. Pablo Morelli is right here. He's our Senior Director of Flight Training Technology. He's really about that app, the whole after program. That is what he does. He's got all the tech part behind that. And then back at headquarters right now, Steven Schroeder is our coordinator. So it's the three of us that do a lot of this stuff. And so you can reach out to us. You can just hit us up at ftinitiative@aopa.org. And like I said, if you come up across anything, like you're like, and if you're talking afterwards, I'm glad to give you my card as well. But my email is just chris.moser@aopa.org. Just hit us up. If you've got a question like, I'm having trouble with the airport, or I'm having trouble with 141, if you're not sure who to talk to, hit us up and we'll point you in the right direction. We'll say, okay, either we can help you or we know the right people that do. And then finally, that's the link there takes you to the Flight Training Initiative that kind of highlights a lot of these different things. Okay, now tell me what you need. What do you need from AOPA, or if you have any questions about what I spoke about? So I know the one thing, airline discount?
No, that one, but then I got
Okay.
a serious one. There seems to be a shortage of hangars all over the place. And as far as people run on the airport boards like this, or represent the counties or whatever, is there any kind of programs or anything that you could help with, identifying, funding sources, state by state or something like that, to get the airport to start, working on their facilities? A long time ago when George Bush was president, we had an issue with down Southwest Services in Houston with, got real political, and a lawyer came down. And it helped out quite a bit, but is there any kind of advocacy for those kind of things? Because it's really getting in the way of, businesses growing and, that kind of stuff, and aviation.
So what I would say to you is, remember I talked about the regional managers that I mentioned, and so if you go to that link that I showed, and I would start there, you can give us a call, because that's kind of on the government advocacy side, and we have legislative affairs, which is the national stuff, and then we have state affairs. So I would start there. We've got those regional managers. They're a good place to start to say, hey, we're having this issue at our airport. We would love to encourage that. I don't know off the top of my head, but as you can see, AOPA does a lot of stuff, so I don't know all of it. But I don't know that we have a program necessarily that says here's funding or whatever it is for things, but we certainly will encourage people, and so that kind of thing, that would be under our government affairs division for sure. So yes, so please reach out. If you don't know where to go, let me know, but I would start with the regional manager, and that's a good place to get moving on, like, what is maybe out there, or if management that's kind of holding things back, like how can we propose this to them and get us moving? Because you're not alone on that, I know.
Yeah, I know.
Cool. What other things? Anything else that we can help you with? Any ideas you'd like to see from AOPA, support you'd like to ask for? Everything's good?
Can't think of anything. Like, you said a lot of things.
Yeah, there is a lot. Well, like I said, if you think of anything, reach out to us. And along with that, just like if you do check out, one thing we're trying to grow is that AOPA Flight School Connector. We love to hear topics too. If there's something like one of the ones that's on my list of to-do things is I have to try to get an accountant to come on and talk about basic accounting, because that seems to be sometimes an issue that comes up.
So
or anything like that. What's that?
So I would like to see somebody, if you're not gonna do it, I'll do it. It's just a marketing guide for flight schools,
Yeah.
and with all those things in it. Basically, here's how you have to make money, here's what you need. Just a SOP guide.
Please join Flight School Connector.
Yeah, it'd be
Yes.
great.
We actually did one on marketing a few months ago. It was last year sometime. So there's
In one piece.
you all of it together.
Yeah, all of it together in a guide.
Yeah. So what you
So then you
said?
can just give it to a flight school and say,
Oh, like a package
there you
thing.
go.
That's something we are working on actually. We have one on customer service that we're going to work this. It's either probably next year. We have a customer service piece, and then the marketing piece was in the works.
Yeah, those are nice
Yeah.
for a flight school. It's a decent package.
So good. I'll make a note of that. So marketing and customer service. Yes.
Independent CFI, same way.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. Marketing for independent
Yeah,
CFOs.
I'm decent at flying and I'm terrible at online marketing.
Yes.
And yet that's what we heard this morning even, that that's one of the things that separates the big schools from the small. And I feed a lot of business to a lot of my neighboring flight schools.
Yeah.
But there's nothing there really tying us all together or putting us out there as a resource to someone who's looking to learn to fly.
Okay, it's a good point. So that idea of looking for the methodology, how you would go about marketing in your local area, and that's a good point. Okay, good. Yes.
How about, I mean, I noticed now there's a big push with the airports and some side of things, but a lot of the airports that the community isn't trying to shut down is actually where the base is for a lot of independent CFIs and stuff. So I think if AOPA could reach out to the instructors to kind of like add that voice to it as opposed to just the big guys, because everybody says noise and it's always the big guys that they seem to focus on.
Right.
With everything from FBOs and stuff, everybody seems to forget about the little guys that also use all these facilities.
So to reach out to them and get a sense of,
to reach out to them and see exactly how does that affect whatever it is they're doing. Because every time I follow anything about an airport, say Santa Monica or anywhere in California or whatever the case, it's always geared towards the big operators.
One thing that I would recommend, this is a good point right here, what you're saying, NASA. So NASA's saying, and then we met earlier. We did one of the sessions of Connector on government affairs, and it was Mike Ginter, I believe, he's the vice president for government affairs. And one thing he recommended for those kind of exact issues, he said, number one thing to do is form an airport. Either if you have an airport association, join it. If you don't, make one, form one. And he had some recommendations, so I think that they'll be glad to chat with you.
We just did one down in our local airport in North Barry because we're having similar issues with the one of the local councils.
Yeah, and so that's a big part of it. And then if you're having issues with communicating, and that's where our government affairs, that's what our team does, the regional manager and that government affairs. And that's what I feel like it's almost like a secret that we have this stuff. But yeah, if you're having those issues, reach out to us. We'll get you in contact with the right person. And like I said, the regional manager to start with and those, and that's the way that you get your voice heard. But yeah, getting that local group together is really important because that will help, right? So yeah, definitely reach out to your government affairs folks. So I got marketing for independent CFIs and for schools, and you mentioned a bunch of other stuff too, so yeah. So that's good. So we're trying to cover that. I don't know about all in one package, but I know the resources we are working on that is happening. Anything else you guys have? Yes.
What about, I saw a couple of years ago, you were active in like flight school, a flying club member. Establish a flying club. Seems to disappear or something. Do y'all still advocate that, or?
Having a flying club?
Yeah.
So.
And how to set one up, and
Yes, we have a team of 2 people that do the flying clubs parts, and that's Steve Bateman and then Drew. And so they still will help people set up a flying club. I know that they were talking this morning when Lights was talking about the whole flying club thing there. We've been involved with that. Jamie Beckett's our Florida ambassador, and he helped a lot with that. So yes, if you want to form a flying club, and in fact, this is not a bad idea for a school to do either, to form a flying club to go with it, because think about schools, they have airplanes they want to use for training, and the best profit that you get out of that is having an instructor and the student in there, right? Not them just flying off and taking it for the weekend and flying it for 4 hours and keeping it for 20 or 48. So having an associated club where you can then, I've trained you, right? We're gonna send you, why don't you join the club over here? And the school could even lease aircraft to it. There's a whole setup that you can do. And then from those, when those folks need training, they come back to you. So yes, we have teams that will do that and help you get a club set up if you're interested in that or more about it. So we have a flying club initiative. So if you're not sure where to go, I think it's in our website, you can fly, and it says flying clubs if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, just email us. I will point you to the right place. I'll get you there to do that. So yes. Yes.
Yeah, I got one. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and we have a large park there. And somebody approached the city and the county about making it a conservancy. And I thought, man, this is a terrible idea, having a private entity run the park. But I was totally snookered when it was all over. I mean, this park flourished, all kinds of money come in. You know, people who really cared about it took over.
Right.
And, you know, maybe AOPA ought to look at doing that same kind of process with airports, because a lot of these airports, I know at least in Memphis, 2 of our airports are controlled by the city, and they just don't care.
Right. So you're saying, and then of course that's why you do have private airports, and it takes somebody passionate about that.
Yeah, but you know, you can't do anything about it if the airport's already there unless you find somebody to get some control.
Right.
You know, because we talked about the hangar issue a couple minutes ago. I mean, it's a national issue. But if we had, you know, if we could get control to some degree over the airports, you know, they did a 50-year lease in this park. And like I said, I thought it was terrible, but when they get done, I mean, this park doesn't resemble what it was beforehand. And it could be the same thing with these airports. And it's going to take somebody with the horsepower of AOPA to make it work.
And let me add on to that. What I see is airport boards are typically not aviation people with vision. It's aviation business people with vision. And so as we, in the stand pad, we just don't have any money for that. You know, it's like, well, what have you done to look for it, or whatever? And it's just like beating your head up. And this is where which I think AOPA does a great job.
Yes.
Is use their know-how to get a crowbar underneath some of these people to move, kind of deal, because the culture is we can't do it, and and what do you mean you can't do it? And I used to be the department chair at Central Washington University, and we had one runway in Ellensburg that was totally inhabited with weeds, and they shut it down, but we need to fix that. Well, we don't have the money, and I was like, well, but that was your job, was to keep that runway open. What happened? And they robbed Peter to pay Paul, and it's just greater than a one-man show to do that. I mean, it's going to take a big initiative to police these people, and I don't know. I don't know if AOPA wants to do that, or have a big stick, or something, but and I mean, kill them with kindness, but it just needs to be, hey, an airport is beneficial, at least, well, we were able to prove, and it took them a while, but, is, hey, hire an airport manager who knows what they're doing, and then two, if you fix the long runway, guess what, you get bigger airplanes, more fuel cells, that kind of stuff, and, it's like, oh, okay, whatever.
So that's what I was saying. I think the idea of the airport association is key for that. Reaching out to our government affairs, because you're exactly right. We want to see that happen. The private, I don't know enough, because I'm not an expert on those issues, but I'm not sure about it's like the private thing could work. I know that there's a mix, because there's a thing called grant assurances. When you take a grant from the federal government, that the FAA then there's like assurances that it'll stay open according to the grant that they signed and the money that they take.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
That's getting into stuff that I am not as familiar with in what I do. But yes, I agree that I would definitely start with like the idea of the association and reaching out and talking to our government affairs folks, because that's exactly what they do. We even have an airport support network. So if you're not part of the AOPA airport support network at your airport, that's something to reach out to us as well. So like I said, reach out. I can point you in the right direction for who to start speaking with and go with that. Because trust me, we know, and obviously we know that AOPA, we don't want, just like all of us, we don't want airports to close. And we fight really hard to try to stop that from happening. So good. All right. I know that's the end of our time. I want to thank you guys for being here. I hope you found some useful stuff. Don't forget, if you want to learn more and see the app in action, that AOPA Flight Training Advantage tomorrow at 11:20 in room, room 4. Pablo will be there, and otherwise, like I said, come up. I'll be glad to give you my card if I can speak. I'm glad to give you my card, and I'll see you guys around. Thank you.
Thank you.